The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Great to have you in. It's a road show Thursday as we get your football weekend kicked off. We're down here at the Single Barrel Hail Varsity Radio Road Show. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and inviting you down here 4 to 6 inside the Graduate at the Single Barrel as we love being here on Home Football Thursdays. Excited to get it going here. Nebraska-UCLA. Plenty of thoughts on it. Brandon Vogel going to be with us from Counter Reed in about 20 minutes or so. In hour 2, we'll be joined by Coach Gary Barnett. Little insight on UCLA's offensive coordinator, one Eric sleeping with Bieniemy. Bieniemy calling the plays. What will that Bruins offense look like and do on Saturday against a resurgent Black Shirts? Damon Benning, part of the Husker Network, and you hear him with Hurrdat Sports weekdays 7 to 10. Him and Ravi. We'll talk with Damon, and then Danny Burke, Burke's Best Bets, some NFL, some college football. 489-1240 to get in. 800-825-5865 to dial up, catch us up on the Hail Varsity Radio Network. Find us all over the network and find us on YouTube, Hail Varsity, YouTube, Hail Varsity Radio, Twitter, different social media platforms. Elijah, you are not in costume. You've got your sweatshirt on. You've got your mustache rocking. But you could go as many things if you wanted to, all with that part of the original tapestry mustache, not the let's glue it on and scare people on Halloween.
Well, I considered going as you. And
how's that? Was that going to be a tribute, or was that going to be a let's get dangerous and evil?
It was going to be a combination of both. It was to honor you. Like, the main selling point was it was going to be like probably just carrying around 2 gallons of bottled water at all times. That was going to be a big one. I was going to have a hand-rolled cigarette somewhere on my person.
Wow.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I was like, this might be difficult to pull off and have people still understand what's going on. I love your cardigan that you got rocking right now. I don't think I have any cardigans in my closet.
Cardigan.
What is it then?
It's just it's kind of a quarter zip with buttons.
With a sweater-like material?
Yeah.
Close enough. That's a cardigan. Maybe not by definition, but I'm going to call it a cardigan.
Thanks. It's a cardigan.
Yeah. So I decided against it. I do have an actual Halloween costume that I'm going to be rocking with for a Halloween party.
Do you have a party to get to tonight?
Tomorrow. It's a Thursday night. Like, I'm an adult now. I'll just wait a night and have a Halloween party tomorrow night. So that's the plan tonight. I'm thinking just pop a scary movie on. I have zero interest in watching Thursday night football with the Texans and the Jets. I've watched one too many Jets games already this season with the Broncos and Jets game. I don't need to watch the Jets anymore. So I think it might be scary movie time tonight. And then back at it tomorrow, and then Nebraska-UCLA.
Good enough. This is the question for you to chime in on the phone lines or in the stream. We'll get our starting 5 shout-outs going in a moment.
Real Matthew says, I just need to bring a nebulizer on wheels.
I love that. I'm on my 3rd nebulizer since Ireland. 2 of them went down in the gorgeous Green Isle. But this one's stayed firm. It made it to East Lansing. It made it to Norman. It made it to Columbus. It's made it to Iowa City. We pray it makes it to Iowa City, 2 for 2. So, yeah, the nebulizer on wheels is very fair. Question out there, couple one. What was the first sports icon / tribute you went as for Halloween? Who was the player you dressed up as for Halloween? Did you dress up? Was it Star Wars, or was it a football, baseball, or basketball player? We'll have our reveals. We'll ask the questions moving forward to our guests. And there's no wrong answer. There really isn't. I won't get into the debate on what age did you stop dressing up. I think I went to a Halloween party in college as Mr. Blutarski 0.0. I probably lived it that semester in college, but I showed up in a toga. So
see, I know I had a Champ Bailey jersey in the closet, and my brother had a Rod Smith jersey in the closet back when we were growing up. I don't think either of them were ever worn as Halloween costumes, though. I'd have to go back and look through the Rolodex of family pictures to see. I don't think did I ever, maybe my dad's listening and he can correct me if I'm wrong here. I don't remember ever going as either of those two, and I wouldn't go as any sports star that wasn't a Denver Bronco, so.
Well, one of the popular costume parties around the time of the toga was a couple of buddies that are Cub fans. They went as Cub fans. This is pre-Bartman, but sadly they had their wrists taped up. Tortured Cub fan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Classy. Loved it. Justin is in first. We are going to shout out Justin. He got in first to the chat, the stream, our starting five. We shout out the first five and many others that get in here. Dylan is here. Good to have you, Dylan. Cliff back in. Cliff is third. He says, go Big Red. Uncle Jimmy checking in. I'm back. Greetings and salutations. NASCAR Eric checks in. NU Grandpa is here. Uncle Larry in. Jeff Snitley, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty. You haven't lived unless you've had a whiskey in Boulder or at the Single Barrel with the Snitley boys. I love them both dearly. Dottie is here. The other Dave checks in. Coach Brandon is in. Montana Husker fan. Present and ready to rock. Mr. Erickson is here. James Williams says, happy Halloween, you Halloweeners. Great Red Shark is in. Mike checking in from Cali. Brian is here. And you also have the other Elijah checking in along with Great Red Shark. Anonymous, they can't possibly lose 7 straight games where a win could make him bowl eligible. Can they? That's a fair question, Anonymous. Is trouble brewing? I don't think so. I feel pretty good about Saturday.
I see what you did there. Trouble brewing. I see. I see. That's why you make the big bucks. That was good.
I make no money, but it's okay. I like what I do. That's fine. Listen, we'll get into it, but interested in what Halloween costume you went as.
And while we're talking Halloween with the stream chat, I do want to pose the question out there. My roommates and I are trying to find like the scary movie to watch on Halloween tonight. So
you got to go Exorcist.
You got to go Exorcist. Okay, that's
original.
It's a classic.
Yes.
Chime in though in the stream chat. Should you so choose, what Halloween movie should I have on my TV tonight? Let me know.
Exorcist will make the hair on the back of your neck stand up and keep standing. Ron is in, says first time visiting Nebraska for a game. Visiting. Let's punch Ron up here. I'm visiting for my birthday. I'm excited. Ron, swing by, say what's up. If you're going to make it down Saturday to the Single Barrel, noon to 2 pregame, Real Red Reaction follows. Single Barrel right now, again, Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill tomorrow, Friday, 4 to 6. Patio show. Excited for that. TN checking in from Atlanta. And Chuck is here in Denver. Tim is in. Love it. So Loose Lips back in and says, do Porky's.
My dad showed me that when I was way too young to be watching Porky's. I think that was like middle school era. In my My dad, his comment afterwards was, man, I didn't remember there being that many full frontal scenes in that one. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's what the movie's known for, Dad.
Yeah, that's why people rent it. Junior got to see Ted 1 when he was about 4. And he then wanted a bear. I wanted a talking bear. And then when we go out to eat, he'd take his crayon and do the old knife game with his crayons, thankfully not a knife. You know, what was it Flash Gordon that Ted and Wahlberg got stimulated with in the bathroom. I had tough answers with the wife that following day. What the hell were you doing? Like, he came out of the bathroom. He was at the top of the landing. I was watching Ted. Didn't know he was sitting down and watching it way behind me. Okay, well, we'll get to some football here. So I love this ball game Saturday for Nebraska. Rain, shine, whatever. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with Nebraska, what they're into, how they're moving. You don't believe me? That's fine. Let's hear from Matt Rule here real quick before we check in with Brandon Vogel. And, it's pretty straightforward with Matt Rule and what he is going to lay out there. And there's concern, and there should be. It's not the record. It's not even the logo. It's, what do you do as a football team if you're Nebraska? Matt Rule touched on slowing down the UCLA offense. On paper, they don't put a lot of points. I think Nebraska's catching a bit of a break. This is weird to say. I don't like teams coming in off of a bye, more time to prep. UCLA's offense could be a little more critiqued by Eric Bieniemy. That said, you go out to Rutgers and get a win finally after getting kicked into the dirt or hanging with top 10 teams for a half. At least they're not coming off of a win. Momentum has hit pause in Westwood here with a bye, you could say. But here's Rule on that Bruin offense.
Well, we're beat up. That's we don't have Malcolm, we don't have Tommy. Potentially Tommy. Malcolm's doing his best to get back, but I don't think that he will. So we're counting on some other guys as well. But they're competitive. Part of that is we have a great rush. So that helps. I think everything on defense is interrelated. Now we're seeing an offense this week led by Coach Bieniemy that's truly a West Coast rhythm offense. The ball's out. Quarterback hits his third step, the ball's out. One hitch, the ball's out. They're not built to turn the ball over. They do an excellent job of getting it out of their hands, but I think our guys are, they're focused. We play a lot of coverages. They study a lot and prepare, and hopefully whoever's out there will play to a good standard.
It's Matt Rule on that Bruin offense. Nebraska's secondary could have some new faces. NASCAR Eric says, rewatch the Indiana game, Elijah. If you're wanting a scary movie tonight, that's scarier than any movie. Anonymous chiming in with the ESPN predictor, likelihood of a win, 67.9% versus UCLA, 17, almost 18% against USC. But Elijah's going out there to La Land, so that percentage is going to jump. 44% against Whiskey, and then 30% against Iowa.
Let it be known. Let it be known.
I feel closer to 50-50 against Wisconsin and Iowa.
Yeah.
I just do. And I know that's a predictor, and I know there's simulations ran. I feel good against USC. I will take all of this back Monday if they don't win on Saturday,
Let it be known, I'm still an offer on my Elijah Herbel roadies to Husker road games. Still have never seen a win. So you can put USC at 0 and you can put Iowa at 0 because I'll be at both of those games. So that's my bet. But this kind of is in response to the question asked by TN. If we don't beat UCLA, he asks, what would be the next sure win to get to a bowl, Wisconsin? And that kind of underscores what the importance of this week is, because I compared it on our other show, Schmidt the Average Joe Sports Show, to last year's Michigan State game, where it's like, this is the game that you should go and get. Because every game following that is a bit of a toss-up 50-50, kind of depends which Husker team you get and which USC team you get, which Wisconsin team you get. Football in November in the Big Ten's a little bit different, so it's super important to get this win, to get that momentum, that good feeling going into your toss-up games, because last year Nebraska got off on the wrong foot to start off November with that Michigan State loss. That was the game you should have gotten to get to bowl eligibility, and then you're looking down at your last three, and you don't have the good feelings going into what were, in my opinion, 50-50 games last year, kind of toss-up games that either team could win it. That's how it feels to me with these last three games again this year. This is the one you should get, especially considering it's at home. And then you have a toss-up game with USC, a toss-up game with Wisconsin, in my opinion, and another toss-up game with Iowa to finish the year. That's how I see it right now. That's what underscores the importance of getting this win, because if you don't get the win, where is the confidence? What's the mentality going into these final 3 games? All of them going to be tough in order to get that 6th.
It turns into a white knuckler. Yeah. It does. And you've got a week to catch hell, self-imposed hell, quite frankly. And what they can't do, what they have needed to learn from a year ago, almost a calendar year ago, is you can't play tight Saturday. And it's different. You're at home, right? You feel good about yourselves coming off the Ohio State game. All fine. They came off a win, too, before they went to Michigan State a year ago. But the difference has got to be Saturday. They can't play tight. They can't be thinking too much. This team can't be worried about the score versus going into that Michigan State game. It went a little sideways on them. Shocking, missed call in the end zone on a touchdown pass, and they just never got back to it.
And the question to me, I love what you said about this team. They're going to be catching hell if they don't get it done on Saturday because of what's coming. This game determines to me, are you, with your final 3 games, are you going to be catching hell or are you going to be raising hell? That's the story. That's a Halloween theme as well. I love that. Maybe that's a title for the show today. But are you going to be catching hell or are you going to be raising hell? That's what I think Saturday determines. Like, is everyone going to be bemoaning your performance and worried, or is everyone going to be excited for you and you're going to be out there playing violent like you do? That's the question to me.
Shout out to my mother. She is in Spain at the Rock of Gibraltar right now, streaming on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it, Road Show Thursday. Hail Varsity here at the Single Barrel inside the Graduate. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Brandon Vogel with us from Counter Reed, counterreed.com. And we'll hit some volleyball. Big one against Wisconsin tomorrow night. We'll talk Big Red football. Vogues, are you geared up? Are you ready? I mean, it is trick-or-treat time tonight. And what's the plan of action here? What's the playbook look like?
We try to keep the playbook pretty simple. So we have a nice neighborhood with a lot of neighbors that we know and love our young children, 3 and 1. So like the 3-year-old just kind of like started to understand what trick-or-treating was last year, and this year he's been asking me about it since about the end of August. So he's pretty pumped. So yeah, we'll get out and about amongst the neighborhood, amongst people that already know him, and do the trick-or-treating thing. But he's pretty pumped. He's going to be a pumpkin. That's what he requested. So that's what we're going with. But so far we're able to keep it pretty low key in terms of Halloween festivities.
Now, if you do like your neighbors, one of the keys, someone in our neighborhood did this growing up. My parents loved stopping by this place. Was they had candy for the kids, but then they had a keg for the adults. So the kids come in and get their candy. The adults come in and get themselves a red Solo cup. Works out great. This could be an idea for you moving forward if you do, in fact, like your neighbors, a close-knit community. Get that keg rocking.
I would love that if somebody else had that. I have not secured a keg, but I do appreciate maybe that becomes the move for me in future years, because that's kind of it's nice. But in a pretty secluded community. We're a little bit off the beaten path. It's like everybody knows everybody around here. But there's not a lot of outsiders coming to this part of the neighborhood to trick or treat. So it's largely a neighborhood party. And if you're going to have a neighborhood party, a nice keg doesn't hurt anything.
Brandon Vogel with us from Counter Reed, counterreed.com. Our buddy I know, Ozzy, just did it up right. This was a few years back when Junior was trick-or-treating, but you know, you had the bowl of candy if you wanted to just take one and not ring the doorbell, but it said take one or more, and it was a cooler full of beer, full of tall boys. So that was a big-time win. Before we get into UCLA and Nebraska, did you go sports icon with kind of that first memorable Halloween costume, or did you go Star Wars action figure?
Yeah, I was not a good Halloween participant as a kid. It's probably isn't a shock to anyone, but I was not huge on the dressing up piece of things. So I would say the vast majority of my Halloween costumes were, I'm going to be Andre Dawson, or I'm just going to dress up in a sports uniform, and that's my costume. And I would kind of cycle through them. But my first Halloween costume, at least the first one that I remember that my parents didn't put me in, was as Teen Wolf. So had a werewolf mask, werewolf ears, and a leather jacket. So that tells you something about the era in which I grew up.
No, I love the Teen Wolf call. The thing that's really cool about Vogue's is he didn't need to glue on the chest hair. He already had it at age 7.
I wish that wasn't as accurate as it probably is. Not at 7, but.
Vogues, you had gorilla legs in 7th grade, didn't you? I mean,
I definitely did. That's absolutely true. By 7th grade, yeah. Not at 7, but by 7th grade, yeah.
Well, let's transition to football. Trick or a treat on Saturday. And I think of Halloween games. I think the 47-game home win streak coming to an end with Ricky Williams in Texas in 98. I also think of Nebraska-Colorado 92, kind of taking the Big 8 back in Halloween on that Halloween night. This is not a Halloween game, close enough. UCLA, Jekyll or Hyde for this Nebraska team. It's fascinating, isn't it? Now this is kind of week 3 of the reveal. What is Nebraska?
Yeah, I think it should be a treat for Nebraska. Like everybody, listening to what we're talking about right now. Like I've been through everything everybody else has in terms of the recent history with Nebraska. Of like, it's hard to look at a game and feel like, oh, Nebraska should win this, so they're just going to win this. But that's honestly how I feel about UCLA, and like, I'm the king of gray area of like, you can lose to any opponent, and that's very much my approach to things. But when I look at this one, like, I think Nebraska has some real advantages in terms of the numbers that I look at each week in my preview at counterread.com. Like, they all point to Nebraska for the most part. UCLA, I mean, the way to boil it down is probably this, and we talked about this on previous shows here. Like, prior to beating Rutgers 35-32, UCLA scored 17 or under in 6 of its 7 games. Like, that's the spot Nebraska has needed to be in defensively to win games. Like, it hasn't won a game when allowing more than 14 points. And that's kind of where UCLA is. And I don't mean that to like take this for granted or not take the opponent seriously. It's just that I think Nebraska defensively has some pretty big edges in this game, and offensively, it should be able to throw the football a bit. I'm not sure it'll be able to run it. That's the one thing for UCLA. That run defense is legit. It doesn't change much when the Bruins have lost or when they have won. But in terms of throwing the football, if this is going well for Nebraska, they should have a pretty good day through the air.
With the air attack of UCLA, they're a West Coast team. That's how Matt Rule described them today. You think there's an advantage for Nebraska in the air. Do you worry about the rain in the forecast, how that could change some things with this game on Saturday? If it becomes whichever team runs the football better wins the game, if it's that kind of rain, how would that change your evaluation of this football game?
Yeah, I think it would make it potentially a closer game than I would have it under perfect conditions. Like, Nebraska's run game isn't great, but UCLA's at this point is worse. In fact, as I wrote in the preview this week, like, UCLA might have the worst power conference rushing attack in the country, just based on the numbers. Like, they're not there. One of my keys for the game, like, and I do think, like, stopping the run is important no matter how good the opponent is or isn't. It was one of the keys I had to last week's game, and Ohio State was averaging almost 5 yards a carry, and Nebraska held them to almost 2. In this game, like, Nebraska probably needs to hold UCLA under 2, and I think that's doable based on what we've seen from the Bruins so far and what we've seen from Nebraska's defense. So if weather does become a factor, it probably shrinks the margin that I think Nebraska comes into this one with, but I still think that's advantage Huskers.
Brandon, as we talk about the potential for November rain, Guns N' Roses fan, no?
Sort of fan. I mean, it's kind of tough to beat Appetite for Destruction by the time you get to November Rain. I mean, I even titled a post a while back on Counter Read using lyrics from November Rain. So I can't count myself as a Guns N' Roses super fan, but like I was in it. That was definitely playing at the Box Butte County Fair a lot when in my prime years of trying to go there and seem cool.
Saw Guns N' Roses. It's almost been 10 years ago down here at PBA. It's an October show. Axel and Slash and the crew, and Axel's I think he moved from quarterback to offensive line, as we all have once we get up there in age. But we talked to Rick Pizzo that day because Pizzo was at the infamous, was it Montreal or Toronto riot in the late 80s where Metallica opened, or it was Guns N' Roses. It was Metallica that opened for Guns N' Roses, and then Axel said something negative about Mounties and Canadian maple syrup, I believe.
That was in Montreal.
Okay, it was Montreal, but I'm just tying the all Guns N' Roses thing together to the time Axel and Slash kicked it around the Haymarket for a while. Pretty good.
Now, how do you tie a riot in Montreal back to Husker football?
It's the offensive line play for Nebraska. That's the tie, because Nebraska better be able to run just a little bit. I mean, were you shocked? Were you absolutely shocked Nebraska ran it as well as they did in the second half?
A little bit. I mean, I think broadly that's the design for Nebraska, and it could work in this game if the passing game is able to do what I think it's able to do, and weather permits that. Like Nebraska is content to run the football and kind of have average success, like. Well, just think about the Ohio State game where it's like, okay, you're going to hand the ball off to Dante Dowdell and Emmett Johnson, and they're going to get 3-4 yards carry, and it's like it's not going to be noticeable. But by the time they got to the second half, and particularly with what the defense was able to give them of playing basically the entire third quarter on Ohio State's of the field, those runs start to become a little bit bigger. Nebraska's definitely trying to go with the cumulative effect, which makes sense because, we just haven't seen them have kind of the game-breaking plays from the traditional handoff run game. So in a game like this, like it becomes really big. Like I kind of likened it in today's newsletter to, this feels on paper a lot like the Colorado game to me. And to their credit, Colorado looks really good, basically since playing Nebraska. But numbers wise, like there's a lot of similarities between where UCLA is at right now and where Colorado was at coming into that game. And I do think Nebraska put a lot into that game. There was obviously like what happened out in Boulder last year that influenced that. So it's not the same in that regard, but in terms of Nebraska's ability, and granted, they didn't do a whole lot in the second half of that game. I would expect them to do better now if they got a similar game where they were in control early, because I think they built further to that sort of being the plan of like, hey, these 3-yard runs that we, seem a little bit maddening in the first 30 minutes, they might become 6-7-yard runs over the final 30 minutes.
Brandon Vogel's with us here. A few more minutes. Hail Varsity Radio, talking about Nebraska's offense, what it might look like on Saturday, especially that rushing attack. And Brandon, to flip it around to the passing attack, do we see the dreaded screen pass on Saturday? There's been
over/under.
There's been reaction this week. Matt Rule even kind of acknowledged the frustration from Husker fans on that one. With that in mind, Do we see it used as much? Do we see it used at all? Is it time to retire it from the playbook? What's your take on the screen game?
I think you'll still see it used to a degree. It's part of the offense, and like even before the Ohio State game, like right now for Nebraska, it's one of those things where like on paper it should be there. It's like, oh, if we just throw this ball out there, like this is the right move to make, but can we get it blocked? Can we get the throw on time? All of the things that go into that. It's an intricate play. Even though it seems somewhat simple. That said, I'd be surprised if we saw the number of screen passes that we saw against Ohio State. Like there's something to, like, it's not just an excuse, I don't think, of like trying to deal with Ohio State's offensive line. And yeah, that's going to up your number of screen passes because you just want to get the ball out. Fair enough. In this one, I think it's more about kind of the intermediate passing game. Like if this game goes well for Nebraska, I think it looks a lot like September, where Jamal Banks and Isaiah Neyor are heavily involved, and not just in the down the field shots, but in the 12 yards over the middle, those sorts of things. And that's an ask for Dylan Raiola, because he was able to hit those things early on against the non-conference schedule. As we moved into Big Ten play, it's become a little bit more difficult, which you would expect, and which you'd expect from a true freshman quarterback as well. But I think that piece of it becomes essential for Nebraska going into Saturday, because those throws should be there. This UCLA defense, in terms of success rate against the pass, is the second worst in the country. So what that says is, like, they'll give up underneath stuff. They're very good at not giving up the big plays in the passing game, but there should be people open. It just becomes a question of, does Dylan Raiola have time to find them, and will he go to them?
It's Brandon Vogel with us, Hail Varsity Radio Road Show here at the Single Barrel 9th and P inside the Graduate back here on Saturday. Vogues, titled today's newsletter column, A Strong Final Act. How good do you feel about November beyond just 6? Secondly, I need to hear about Counter Read. How can folks sign up?
Yeah, as far as the rest of November, ask me after Saturday, because that's kind of the piece of it. Like, I think Nebraska has a very good shot in this game. Like, this line opened at Circus Sports at -9 on Sunday. It was down to 6.5 by Tuesday, which is honestly a line move that surprises me a little bit. Like, which, I get things wrong all the time. Doesn't mean anything. But like, I see some real edges for Nebraska in this, and it's rare that I feel that strongly about it. So, and when you pair this game with the 3 to come after it, including a bye week, like it totally changes the tenor of things. Like, if Nebraska can get the bowl game monkey off of its back, then it can just go forth and be in 3 games that, like, I think Nebraska will have. It won't be a favor to USC, but it will have a real shot there. Wisconsin game will be tight. Iowa game will be tight. So it's kind of, it's not like the season is lost if Nebraska, things get a little bit random and loses to UCLA on Saturday, but it would go a big way towards just giving them more runway to finish the season out as strong as I think Nebraska has shown itself to potentially be so far. They're 5-3. It's kind of a fair record, but they're definitely better than I think they were a year ago. Mm-hmm. So go out, check this box, and play free the rest of the way. And that'll be kind of a big theme, I think, no matter what happens of the coverage to come under or at Counter Read. You can check that out at counterread.com. Twice weekly newsletter from myself and Aaron Sorensen. Got a bye week coming up, so we'll probably dip into a little bit more volleyball and basketball in those to come. Also got some college football playoff stuff I want to talk about post first rankings release, even though that may not be, Nebraska's probably not going to be in there, but I still think it's important to have a grasp on that for the college football fan in general.
What do you feel about tomorrow night on the volleyball court? Nebraska's at Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a house of horrors, but I feel like Nebraska's in maybe the best, at least as good a spot as it has been going to Wisconsin to play that team as it has been in recent years. So it's been tough to find fault with much of what Nebraska volleyball has done post that loss to SMU. So I think your hope is to see it look that way against Wisconsin, a team that has certainly had Nebraska's number of late.
Vogues, we'll talk Saturday, and thanks again for the time.
Thanks, guys.
Good to spend time with Brandon Vogel here at the Single Barrel Roadshow Thursday to get your football kicked off that football weekend. We're back here on Saturday noon to 2 ahead of Nebraska-UCLA. Real Red Reaction follows. DeShaun Foster weighed in on some of the comp here between Mahomes and Dylan Raiola.
You could tell he's getting more comfortable. He has a big arm, so he's going to try to make plays. But I'm excited for our DBs and our front and our linebackers and everybody. So, he's playing good ball. And I was with Pat Mahomes in 16 at Texas Tech. So, it's crazy when you see it because, he really does emulate Pat.
So, kind words there on the comfort level and the mannerisms. Of course, Foster, a part of that Texas Tech coaching staff, Elijah, back when Mahomes was roaming the western plains of Texas. So we'll have some more Halloween-themed commentary. The late, great, dear friend of the show, Mike Leach. And it's always awesome to hear his rant and ranking, quite frankly, on Halloween candy. We talked it over with him over the years a couple of different times, but don't get him cranked up on candy corn, man. He is he is the most anti-candy corn. He was the most anti-candy corn dude in this world, which is fine.
But candy innovation, I will say we've come back. There's been some candy innovations within recent years that I think has been really exciting for Halloween candy enjoyers as a whole. I mean, you think the Nerds gummy clusters are the big one that come to mind. I know Leach liked those as well, but every year feels like I go, wow, they're doing that now? Like, it's pretty incredible what science is doing with candy,
Right. Well, and Tiger Shark is right. Candy corn is disgusting. It is good if you mix it in with peanuts or cashews or something.
You got to have the saltiness, the salty with the sweet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is absolutely right. Come see us here. Still down here for another hour here at the Single Barrel inside the Graduate 9th and P. Roadshow Thursday to get your football kicked off at the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill tomorrow in Gretna. Patio show possibility. We'll wind down hour one next.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? We're not pointing you yet.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you here at the Single Barrel. It's Hail Varsity Radio. Roadshow Thursday, getting your football weekend kicked off. Jets, Texans, come get yourself a monster, incredible steak. Get some pork chops. Get a burger. Some of the sausage. I mean, it is incredible. Get the charcuterie board and get into that meat heaven feel. Over 200 whiskeys to choose from. You like rye. You like something imported. You like American. It's all here for you. That wall of whiskey I posted on Twitter at Schmidt_radio is very real. It waves at you when you walk by the wall of whiskey. If you're a Guinness guy like Bill Dolman, Pride of Fairbury, they have Guinness on tap for you. So it is all covered in candy. One post-game show was Mike Leach. It's incredible how the old pirate broke down the Halloween candy rankings and got into the anti-candy corn movement. Here is the pirate as we love and remember the man.
We talked about on the broadcast how you hate candy corn. What's your favorite Halloween
candy corn?
I mean, I completely hate candy corn. When I was a kid, well, gummy bears, let's see. Gummy bears for sure.
Sour or regular?
The Herbel. It's got to be the Herbel ones. And then the other thing I like is when they used to have the sprees in a box. Outstanding. You have to go to the dollar store to find it, but I do. And then the latest, you know, there's still candy innovation, although a while back I found that Europe had better candy than we did overall because they have gummy everything. And then, you know, they have those Nerds clusters, which is new.
With the gummy.
Yeah, which is good. The Nerds clusters is good. And then if you go chocolate, probably Almond Joy.
Love it. Hopefully you'll get some of that next week.
Yeah, we'll see.
Love it. Love the pirate. That was so good. But you are not wrong. I mean, those Nerd clusters are hard to pass up.
I've been screaming it from the rafters for probably 2 years now, from whenever I first tried them. They're an absolute game changer. And they got the new flavors now. Have you seen the new flavors?
I kind of like I have not. I kind of like the lightsaber gummies.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You're like, which gummies do you mean?
No,
I got that look from you.
No, the Nerds gummy clusters, no, because now they got the red, white, and blue flavor, which I don't know what red, white, and blue tastes like until now, and it tastes great. Then they have the strawberry and grape combo, which, I mean, those are the two classic flavors of Nerds, and together they're incredible. If I only had Nerds gummy clusters as the only candy I could eat till the day I die, I'd be a happy man. Those things are fantastic.
That is good. Well, Mad Piper, and he says any gummies with THC are awesome, but not legal. Loose Lips says these new flavors is a fatal disease in a cluster. Thank you, Loose Lips, for that. What's Barney say about Nebraska? UCLA, B-enemy, the Big Red Post, Ohio State. We'll check in with Coach Barnett. Damon Benning next hour as well, and then Best Bets with Danny Burke, the Pride of Chicago. Burke's Best Bets before we say goodnight. So we're here at the Single Barrel, 9th and Pete, inside the Graduate Roadshow Thursday, getting that football weekend kicked off with Hail Varsity YouTube channel.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back into it. It's hour two. It's Hail Varsity. We're down here at the Single Barrel. Good to be back at the Single Barrel as we get your football weekend kicked off Thursday and Saturday here at the Single Barrel, 9th and P. We welcome in Hall of Fame coach Gary Barnett to talk some Big Ten, some Big Red, and those bowl-bound Buffs. Coach, got a bye week this weekend, 18 or 36 Saturday, or are you front and center in front of the TV watching college football?
It'll be 18 and then back to early, though, and then back to the games. So
that is the way to do it. It's flipping to November shortly. I got to ask you, though, if folks were to rate Coach Barnett in his time in Chicago and his time in Boulder and his time in Arizona, how are you a 5-star candy giver for Halloween?
Oh, well, in Arizona, no stars because no kids up here in our area.
Okay.
Probably in Colorado, we were a 3-star, maybe a 4-star. Chicago, you had to be a 5-star,
Okay.
Because everybody knew where you lived.
Okay, I like it. Now, we'll get to football, but what was the candy of choice to give out? Were you a Kit Kat guy? Were you a Nerds? Snickers? Okay.
Yeah, that's because Mary wanted the leftovers. So.
Okay. All right. I like it. Good. Snickers is.
I can get down with that. Yeah. Schmidt and I are both partial to Almond Joys, which has gotten mixed reactions this week.
I would do an Almond Joy. That would be me.
Okay, good work. So we're in good company.
Or peanut M&Ms.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Did you ever go? Did you dress up for Halloween as a kid? And if so, was it a sports figure?
Chris, you know how long ago that was? You expect me to remember that? I don't remember any outfit that I had. I don't. As a sports, I don't know. You quit dressing up at, I don't know, 14, 13.
Yeah,
so.
12, 10. I mean, yeah, it depends on the household. But you guys, you're all in the Mickey Mantle era. So I figured everybody in the neighborhood was a Mickey Mantle guy.
No, I don't know if we paid that much attention to it, to tell you the truth. It wasn't on TV. It wasn't like it is now where you had just mass sports. I mean, if you were to see something on sports, it would be for 2 minutes on TV. So you didn't you watched Saturday with Dizzy Dean, and that was it for baseball. So, you didn't have that much exposure.
Okay.
See, Coach, whenever I was 10, this is when Nebraska was leaving the Big 12, I went as a blind official, and then I printed off the Big 12 logo and put it on my shoulder, and that killed. I thought about bringing it back, given the officiating that we saw Saturday, just put a Big 10 logo on that same outfit, but I don't think I fit in it anymore.
Well, you had a few penalties, but you had every chance to win that game, and they were giving you a chance, and you were taking it. I mean, just it didn't work out, but dang, it was a heck of a well-played game by you guys.
Gary Barnett with us. Coach, we had a blast in Columbus. The game didn't disappoint as far as just it being close. There was a moment where it was 14-3, and we kind of looked at each other, all of us Nebraska folks in the press box, and said, is this when the hammer comes down? But Nebraska found some field goal kicking, moved the football. Defense was incredible. What did you think of Nebraska, and how do you explain Indiana to Ohio State, that night and day difference?
Well, your pride gets hurt. And I got to tell you, I was over, our game was at 8:25, so I was over hitting some balls, and I was sat down with a bunch of the guys at the Boulder Country Club, and they were all rooting for Nebraska. I want you to know that. Every one of them were rooting for Nebraska. We watched the last couple plays of the game. But, your pride gets in the way. Your pride just says, whoa, this isn't happening to me again. This isn't who I am. And so, it was a good turnaround for Nebraska, for Matt Rule, and it was a tough transition for Ohio State. They're just darn lucky to have won that game. Your defense played great, and the last series with the going backwards and then the interception for you guys sort of killed you. But you held those guys to probably the lowest rushing yardage they've had in years, 64 yards, and it was a well played game by the defense, and it just it didn't quite happen, but you got a lot of respect from playing them that way.
That hurt pride, Coach. Can you sustain that as a coaching staff through the rest of the season? That's kind of one of the things we've been asking ourselves about Nebraska this week is, can they maintain that same level of play, that same, violence, if you will, throughout their final 4 games in the season? They need it on Saturday if they want to get to bowl eligibility. Is that something you can maintain over multiple weeks, that feeling following that just a crushing loss to Indiana?
Yeah, if you realize just that you can do it. If you have it on film, you can see it now. It's not a matter of, it's in you, let's get it out. There it is. It's in black and white or red and white, whatever colors you guys do it. But, it really is. This is who we are. And I think Matt said something about this is the first time he felt like he had there were in that locker room, there's a championship environment or something to that effect. And so, that's what he's telling them. This is who we are. This is who we have to be from here on. And, it's up to leadership. But, absolutely you can.
A year ago, Coach, Nebraska had 4 cracks to get bowl eligible after a turnaround October. Pressure's real. This team's had some mental challenges dealing with the pressure in the moment, and it's a group of older classmen that man, they've given everything to this football program. They don't have a great history of winning. They're on the doorstep again. How do you deal with that PTSD, for lack of a better term, with some of these older guys and as head coach? You need one more, but honestly, there's more out there for you than just getting to 6. You focus on Saturday.
I think that's more of a fan reaction than it is a player reaction. Players know how close they were. They know what they want. They're more immune to that sort of thinking than you think. And, so they're set up for this weekend. They have a great chance to be bowl eligible, and then nobody wants to stop at 6. And especially they had a taste in their mouth of how close they were last week. So, I think you guys are absolutely in pretty good spot. You're not going to play in the Big 12 or Big 10 championship game, but you've got a legit chance to finish out the season with 9 wins.
Mm-hmm. Coach, I want to get your thought on UCLA. Of course, Eric Bieniemy's there, close with him. DeShaun has had a tough first-year schedule. I mean, and UCLA's hung for a half with about everybody. They've been not easy to put away. They've been closer scores than some of us would think. What's your take on UCLA coming in?
Well, first of all, I can say there's a bunch of expletives coming out of Eric Bieniemy's mouth this week, and first of all, he's gonna bring the Nebraska rivalry from Colorado to that UCLA locker room. I can guarantee you that. And for him to sit there and say our team is only rushing for 64 yards a game, I mean, that's got to eat at him like crazy. So he's going to be a one-man wrecking crew at practice this week. I can guarantee you that.
Coming off a bye, do you think he's the type of coach that's going to have 1 or 2 tricks up his sleeve? I know there always are, but Bieniemy's such a good offensive coordinator, that NFL experience. I mean, what do you think he's going to have up his sleeve in a game like this?
Well, I don't really know. I'd go back and look at some Chiefs stuff, and I'm sure Coach Rule's doing that. But you don't really know how much of that was Eric and how much of it was Andy. But you can make a trick reel of all the plays everybody makes. You just hit a button and it sorts it out. So they can look at that and have some sort of idea. You can't prepare for all of them. And UCLA's not good enough to perform some of those. It's not like they've got the quarterback from Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes, playing for them. Gerber's is good, but he's not that way. So, you just go back and familiarize them, get down in distances, and when they come about, if there's a tendency and that sort of stuff, and try to prepare for a couple. But you can't consume yourself with it.
Gary Barnett with us, Hail Varsity Radio, Nebraska-UCLA. Coach, what was your approach? Were you a firm talker, a yeller, or a calm conversationalist with officials on the sideline?
I was a firm conversationalist. I wasn't a yeller. I just knew it wasn't going to do me any good. But you're always aware of that there's a camera on you, and you don't want to go home and see yourself ranting and raving and looking like you got green stuff coming out of your mouth when you're talking to the officials. So, no, I was stern but firm and calm.
Yeah. Who is the biggest volcano you worked with or competed against?
You mean as a coach?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Who was fuming all the time?
I don't know. Pelini?
Well, I mean, that's fair. That's fair. He was never happy, was he?
We saw it firsthand, too.
Mount Pelini.
Yeah, I mean, that's the name that comes to my mind. And Mike Stoops. I mean, you ever watch Mike Stoops on the sideline at Oklahoma or at Arizona? Oh, my God, he'd lose it like crazy.
You've mentioned two of Youngstown's finest.
There's something about that, isn't there?
Oh, you're not wrong, man. They're just on edge there a little bit. How about the Buffs and this run you guys have had? Great ball game against Cincy. We stayed up and watched in Columbus. And what are the chances here, Coach, of getting into the Big 12 title game? I know BYU and Iowa State are unbeaten. You got K-State right there, but you guys are in the top four. How do you think this November looks?
Well, I think we can't worry about that. I think we got to control what we can control. We don't control our own destiny. We need too many things to happen now. We needed like 6 things to happen the last 3 weeks when we were Colorado in 1990. And they all happen, and we end up in the national championship game. So it can happen, but we need a combination of. BYU doesn't look like they can lose with their schedule. I think the chance you hope for is that Iowa State gets knocked off a couple times, and one of those games they got to knock off Kansas State. So we need the Kansas State to lose and Iowa State, or BYU to lose 1 or 2 games for us to have a shot in there. And but it can happen because we're playing really well defensively. We're only giving up 6.5 points a half in the second half. So that's a significant stat right there. We went 4 games without giving up a point in the third quarter. So that's significant. And if we can keep that up and get a little bit better in the offensive line, call the run a few more times to make everybody respect it, we could win out and get to 10 wins, and that gets you a good bowl game. Might not get you in the championship game, and at this point in time, we gotta try to get to 10 and see what happens with everybody else.
Coach, we'll hit some rapid fire. Ohio State, Penn State -3.5. Buckeyes favored. Do they bounce back, or is it Franklin's time to get that second win over the Buckeyes?
Well, if Allers plays, I like Penn State. If he doesn't play, I think Ohio State wins the game. So I don't know. It's a 4.5 point spread when I put it down on paper. I don't know what it is now, but it's at Penn State. I'll tell you, I sort of like Penn State, but I need the Drew Allers to play.
Coach, Oregon, Michigan, you got the Ducks going to the Big House. Oregon's a 14.5 point favorite. Do you see a situation where Michigan can keep this thing close?
Nope. First of all, the Ducks want this game. The Ducks want this game. They're like I was for a while. I got tired of hearing about Michigan and this and that, and so I think Oregon's going to go in there and beat them by 14.5 is what I had. I think they cover.
Coach, how about Minnesota? They're favored at Illinois.
I saw that. I'm surprised by that, but Minnesota's playing really well right now. And but I think Illinois wins this game. It depends on how shell-shocked they are from last week, but I think Illinois wins this game. But I'll tell you, PJ's done a really nice job at Minnesota.
He's been outstanding. Upset alert. A&M at South Carolina or Indiana at Michigan State?
Neither one. Okay. A&M's got it rolling. And I don't know that South Carolina can score enough points to win that game. And Michigan State's not good enough to beat Indiana right now. So I think Indiana wins, and I think A&M wins.
Coach Gary Barnett with us, Hail Varsity Radio. We're here live at the Single Barrel. Coach, we'll holler next week. Thanks for a few minutes.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it, Hail Varsity Roadshow Thursday here at the Single Barrel inside the Graduate 9th and P. Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill tomorrow in Gretna. Damon Benning with us, Hurrdat Sports, 7 to 10 weekday mornings. You hear him, of course, on the call. This weekend, UCLA. Damon, what's good, man?
Oh, I'm just trying to make it, right? It doesn't seem like we've been home for a while, so I'm actually looking forward to this one.
I know, almost a month. So we got to do the traditional, obvious Halloween costume question. That's been a running theme today. First sports figure you went as, if you did, as a kid?
Easy breezy, Roger Craig.
Okay.
I had an old mesh Nebraska 21 jersey. I had a double bar helmet that I used for my YMCA football days, and I was one Roger Craig.
I love it. Artez listens to us over the road, so maybe he'll call in tomorrow. I love that. So Roger Craig, I went, and I said this in hour one, I went as George Brett was my guy. I dressed up in George Brett gear during the summer when my dad was playing softball. Elijah, were you an Elway guy or Jake the Snake?
I said this in our interview with Barney. I never went as any of those guys, at least in my recollection, but I did go as the Big 12 officials the year Nebraska left the Big 12 and there was all those horrible calls. So I was the Big 12 official. I just happened to be blind as well.
So you had a cane?
Yeah.
No.
People love that costume, I'll tell you that.
Well, there we go, Damon. Elijah off the top rope with an elbow.
Tailor two costumes.
Yeah. I like Damon's. I like the Roger Craig call. Pretty awesome. Question about Saturday and bigger picture for November. Damon, do you think the defense will have to carry Nebraska to the finish line, whatever that finish line is, 6 or more? Nebraska is in a familiar position just like a year ago, but is it going to be the defense that dictates things?
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I mean, carry may be too strong of a word. I do think the offense will show enough flashes, Schmitty. I do. They're going to get a stiff test in some ways this weekend with UCLA, who's, I think, pretty stout up front along that D-line. And they've got some thump in the back end and the secondary, too, with some physical presence. But I think there are some plays to be made. They stay on the field, 57% of the time they're allowing the offense to convert third downs on them. So I think there's some opportunities this season for Nebraska to still kind of evolve offensively. While I do think the defense is going to really start to kind of settle in and be who we've seen, carry may be too strong of a word, but if you said would they lead the way, I definitely think that's the case.
It's Damon Benning with us here, Hail Varsity Radio, previewing Nebraska-UCLA. And Damon, we learned today that Malcolm Hartzog expected to miss the UCLA game. Tommy Hill's also unclear. It seems like he's week to week at this point in time. You don't really know with him. What does that mean for you with this Husker back end with the secondary? They had a great game last week. What does that mean to you to not have those two guys potentially?
Well, I tell you, it's young guys come on down, right? I mean, they'll maybe take a look at moving Baby Blyhill, come on down and move Buford back to safety. You may play a couple of young guys on the back end just in place of Buford. So what I do think is Nebraska's got some options. Now, they may be a little inexperienced, obviously, and a little green in some areas, but they definitely have some options. It always hurts when you don't have kind of your kind of a savvy, veteran experience crew that they are. But again, this is how you've recruited. This is why you've recruited. We'll see what happens with the bodies that they put in.
Damon, you've done an amazing job in the booth. And how hard was it to call that Ohio State game?
Yeah, it was difficult. I'm just thankful, and I mean this, and Schmidt, you know me. Like I'm just thankful for guys like Greg that are super professional and very steady, right? Like that's a word that I would use to describe his personality. Never too high, never too low. And there were times where, I'm thinking to myself, whether unfair is the used word or not right, or I had lots of adjectives that came to mind when I'm watching that game be officiated, and it was hard. It was extremely hard for me to kind of shake real time. But when you work with professionals, at some point you think it's going to rub off on you, and thank goodness it did, because it could have been a very long, crybaby-ish kind of broadcast, if I'm being honest. So It was tough, but again, the Greg Sharps of the world helped.
You know, those adjectives going through your brain, uttered and screamed in living rooms and ballrooms across the state, my friend.
Yeah, well, it's hard because you don't want to be the guy that gasses the fire. And listen, you are talking to somebody who's participated in a '93 FSU Nebraska game where I felt like that was a flat out travesty. But there are times where I actually wanted to use the word unfair, and that's you definitely don't want to be like that as a player or somebody that's competing. Because listen, sports are tough. But unfair was a word that I was tempted to utter, that I had to get my composure.
Is dealing with referees from a sideline point of view now as you're coaching, is there an art to that?
Yeah, I do. I think as long as they're communicating, Elijah, it's fine. And we've got some good ones that do a really good job of explaining. They may say, hey, hang on, I'll get to you, or, we'll engage and I would call it an explanation. And sometimes that's all coaches are looking for is a, hey, what'd you see? Because a lot of times I think coaches would be willing to give officials the benefit of the doubt with dialogue. It's when you can't get answers or you don't feel as though you're being heard that things can escalate in a hurry. And we clearly saw that, whether it was Ryan Day or Coach Rule at times in the previous weeks where when they don't feel like they're being heard, that's when things can get out of control in a hurry.
Couple more minutes. Damon Benning with us, Hail Varsity Radio Roadshow here at the Single Barrel inside the Graduate 9th and P back for Saturday pregame and Real Red Reaction. How much scrambling / quarterback run, designed or not, will be needed Saturday? You've mentioned the UCLA front, their pass rush. What's the outlook Saturday with Dylan in this newfound scramble ability?
I think I think he's well aware. There's probably 2 to 3 scrambles a game. I mean, he does love Mahomes, so he's seen it firsthand where there are those 2 to 3 scrambles a game that Mahomes will pull off that will break your back, even though you wouldn't necessarily consider him a runner. And I think Dylan will have that in his repertoire. I think he's healthy. He feels a lot better with his legs and his ankles. So, UCLA has to play a role in that. It's a lot easier to scramble when defenses have their back to you, which means you need to play a lot of man-to-man. I think for UCLA, they try to pressure Nebraska. They haven't been a great sack team on the year. They're much more stout against the run than they are getting the quarterback to the ground. So, if opportunity presents itself, I do think Dylan is confident enough, but UCLA will play a role in that as well because you won't confuse him on Saturday with Steve Young.
Flip it around. What do you expect from Bieniemy in this UCLA offense?
So I think they've had a couple of weeks to maybe implement and tinker with the run game. They haven't been able to really hand the football off and run it with a great deal of consistency. And so I think you need a complement. Nebraska is traditionally very good against one-handed opponents. And while the tandem, their backfield may catch 9 or 10 balls, so Nebraska's going to have to be on high alert for that. I think, Bieniemy's got to figure out a way to run the ball with handoff run game. You got a quarterback that's just elusive enough to buy some time in the pocket. He's got tremendous command of where he wants to go with the football. I just wouldn't let him settle into a rhythm by allowing the run game to get going. And I think that's one thing on the road that Coach Bieniemy and Coach Foster, 2 former running backs, maybe will look to have implemented in the bye week is a few more creative ways to have some consistency running the football.
It's Damon Benning with us here. And Damon, we'll get you out on this. Weather potentially in the forecast with rain. At least that's what the weathermen are saying, potentially coming our way on Saturday. How does that change the game plan for you with the Husker offense? How does it change the game as a whole?
Well, I think for Nebraska, it's perfect. I mean, Coach Rule is a coach that wants to thrive in chaos. And anytime he thinks he can get a distinct advantage, and in this case, whether from West Coast to middle of America, he's going to want that. The more adverse, the better for him. He feels that that's how his team is built. It would not surprise me at all if he's practicing with wet balls to some capacity, even with the weather being the way it is this week, it would not surprise me. Or, you look at the forecast and he's trying to predict rain and making sure that they're out practicing in it. Nothing would surprise me in that regard with Coach Rule. But for Nebraska, the weather, they may not even talk about it. Weather won't be a factor. He always hopes for poor conditions, and the worse the weather, I think, the better his team will play.
Last thought on UCLA, as a big picture question for the Bruins, what should they be? I know that they're Westwood, I know they're basketball, but from a football standpoint, they've always had dudes and they always put guys in the NFL. What should this program? What should the program be?
Well, I think it's middle of the pack in the Big Ten, and I don't think that's out of the realm of possibilities. They got a nice fertile recruiting ground. You have a no nonsense head coach. You have a proven offensive coordinator, and I think they may have to take advantage a little bit of an interesting time with their neighbors down the street in Los Angeles and down there in that Southern Cal area for the Trojans while they're kind of feeling their way along with whatever happens with Lincoln Riley and the growth of that program. So I think, listen, middle of the pack in the Big Ten is pretty good. I mean, you're in the top half of that conference, the top 10 or 11. You're probably a pretty good football team, and I think that's what UCLA aspires to be.
Damon, take care. Listening to you on Saturday. Thank you much.
I appreciate it. You guys have a good rest of the show.
Good to spend time with Damon Benning. You hear him Hurrdat Sports 7 to 10. Him and Ravi on the Hail Varsity Hurrdat Network, and of course, catch him with Greg on Saturday. Reminder to get buckled up. Use your seatbelt. It saves lives. It prevents injuries only if properly worn. Make it click. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. We'll wind it down. Danny Burke on the way.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out, Hail Varsity Radio Road Show Thursday at the Single Barrel inside the Graduate. Thursday, get that football weekend kicked off back here Saturday, noon to 2, in front of Nebraska-UCLA. And then again, we'll be right around 6-ish or so till 8-ish or so for Real Red Reaction. Danny Burke with us. Burke's Best Bet at Danny Burke 5 on Twitter, and check him out at Stochastic.com and also the Odd Shopper. Danny, how we doing? What's the weekend look like, man?
Doing good, Schmitty. A little bit more laid back this weekend. Yeah, no bachelor parties, no crazy happenings necessarily. Ideally, just a stress-free weekend of football, which, as you know, and especially I know, Nebraska fans, we don't have that. But when you combine it with me also being a Bears fan, I just debate why even watch this sport at any capacity. So hopefully it's a 180 from what we witnessed this past weekend if you're someone like myself who roots for the Chicago Bears and the Nebraska Cornhuskers. But at least the Huskers got we got some positivity out of last week, right? The defense stepped up, and they had their chances, man.
Danny,
they did. I was the cover.
I was gonna ask Danny if you're going as Caleb Williams for Halloween, but I think we already know you're going as Dan Lanning, correct?
I know. I got to get my hair cut a little bit again. I got to get a little bit more of a trim now, and then I'll go as Dan Lanning. And hopefully people give me a little bit more attention that way. Because I think if I were Caleb for Halloween, people may start throwing stuff at me. But no, I guess that would more so be Eberflus. I'm still all in on Caleb. Love that guy. If I was Eberflus, I'd be run out of town.
Danny Burke with us, Burke's Best Bets, burksbeat.com. So Black Hills Brennan has chimed in, dear friend of the show. He has been on a cold streak. He is sending out an SOS. What do you like this weekend? We'll get to Nebraska shortly, but is there a college or NFL game you got circled? Clearly, you cleaned it up with, of course, the Dodgers in 5.
I stayed the hell away from that World Series. I kind of was just like, I'm not even that excited to see these two teams in here. And, I mean, obviously I was watching, but didn't do too much from a betting perspective. NBA's been great so far. We've been doing a ton in terms of the National Basketball Association. But obviously tonight we got a big football game to look forward to and then tons this weekend. So I'll give you a little rundown of what I've got so far. Tonight, I lean toward the Jets. And, the reason that I say that, and it's kind of a cliche, like, hey, it's a must-win game for this team. Well, if it's a must-win, you must not be very good, right? That's the old adage. But you should have the advantage on the short week. You definitely should have the advantage in terms of injuries, right? You're missing Nico Collins. You're also missing Stephon Diggs if you're the Texans. And Elijah and I were just talking off air. I mean, it's kind of appalling that the Texans are, 6-2 right now, despite the games we've witnessed them play and the injuries they've dealt with. But shout out to their team for dealing with that adversity. It just seems like this fits way better for the Jets. So I have a heavy lean toward them. But a play I did take a little flyer on here, I went with Garrett Wilson anytime touchdown. Now, I know everybody out there is probably like, how could you pick him over Davante Adams? Well, look, since Davante Adams has joined the team, Garrett Wilson has actually been targeted more times overall, only a couple more times, but he's made more usage of it, 174 yards, and Adams only has 84 yards. In terms of the red zone, Davante's only gotten one more target, yet we're getting plus 180 on Garrett Wilson instead of Davante Adams plus 160. You're kind of paying that public tax because everybody is just waiting for Davante to get that score, and he very well might, but I still think Garrett has a really good shot. He has, I think, 3 touchdowns on the year, but the highest expected touchdown rate in the NFL with 6 expected touchdowns. So I'm taking a little bit of a flyer with Garrett Wilson tonight. Another play that I made today, going with my Bears here, but Cole Kmet, I took him over 25.5 receiving yards. Now that number has moved up to 28.5. If you still have 28.5, it's a green light. Kmet, our projections have him at about 35 receiving yards. And throughout this past week, among all the terrible things that were discussed, one of them was the lack of receptions and targets toward Cole Kmet because he was coming off a signature game in London where he got 2 touchdowns. The dude was just a beast, and then he only had 1 against Washington. So that should be implemented and emphasized this week against Arizona. That's allowing opposing tight ends over 51 receiving yards, 2 tight ends per game. So that was the other play I made. And then I also did a 6-point teaser. I teased down the Bengals to -1 over the Raiders, who are just an absolute dumpster fire of a team. Joe Burrow's still playing very well. The Bengals defense has regressed, but we do talk about must-win games. This is certainly one for Cincy. Instead of laying over a touchdown, tease them down to just having to win the game outright. And then I went with Kansas City -2.5 on Monday night. The Bucs had a little bit of a resurgence rallying around the injuries to Chris Godwin, to Mike Evans. They got by against a familiar opponent in their division rival, the Falcons. Won't be the same primetime at KC. Chiefs get the job done. I teased them down under the key number of 3. Got them at 2.5 for another play.
Danny, what's your lean on Saturday? Huskers and Bruins going at it. The classic Big Ten matchup, Nebraska-UCLA. Huskers are a 6.5-point favorite on a potentially rainy day in Lincoln. What do you like there?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to fall into my trend of, fading these West Coast teams coming into this Midwest territory. And we know what this UCLA team is. And look, props to them for going on the road and beating Rutgers. I was certainly on the side of the Scarlet Knights with that trend once again, even though that's more East Coast. But still, I've been looking to fade these teams. But this would be a good spot to do so. You're getting you're getting under the key number of 7 with Nebraska. And the only thing that makes it a little weird to do it is because you feel like it could be a overreaction or just instant reaction. Monday morning quarterback, hey, Nebraska almost beat Ohio State. Now you're getting a crap team in UCLA. But if Nebraska now is building from that, which you heard Rule's comments about what the vibe was in the locker room before, during, and after the game, if they can carry that, this is where it goes from now, right? If Rule is going to be that coach we've seen in year 2, forget what happened at Indiana. Forget what happened at Illinois. Take what you learned from that Ohio State game and carry that over. There's no reason why this team should not win by a touchdown. If the defense is doing their thing, great, awesome. That's what we expected them to be. Now the big question mark is, are we going to get Raiola to hit those key throws that he missed against Ohio State? That would have been the difference in the game. And it's a lot to put on a 19-year-old kid, especially on the road at Ohio State. But now you're in a familiar setting against a team that doesn't have that familiarity against these Big Ten teams when it's getting colder out and with those weather conditions, as you alluded to. I would definitely err toward the side of Nebraska.
Danny Burke with us, Burke's Best Bets, Burke'sBeat.com, Stochastic Odd Shopper at Danny Burke 5 on Twitter. Pride of Chicago with Nebraska and the 6.5. Real quick here, about a minute. What do you make of the line dropping from 9.5 to 6.5 like it has?
I think it's just one of those things where Nebraska hasn't proved that they should be laying over a touchdown, right? I mean, what have they shown us? Again, yes, they played Ohio State close, but it wasn't that they won the game. And, you beat Rutgers only by 7 at home. And, look, UCLA did beat Rutgers, sure, but I still think the Scarlet Knights team is a tough squad. And then that Purdue game, that first half was atrocious. So when you've been in Big Ten play, nothing has really gone your way per se. So I don't think that's shocking to see how big that line move has been. If Nebraska can control the ball, avoid shooting themselves in the foot, emphasis on that, then again, this is a game where they control everything, and they should be able to wear down this Bruins team. So I think it's more so just of, hey, you don't deserve to almost be laying double digits. We've had you in that spot a couple times now, and you haven't been able to pull through with it really. Or I guess the one time really was Illinois. I know Purdue too, but again, that first half was brutal. But yeah, and how can you blame these people, right? And maybe it's one of those things as well where it's like you just had your so-called championship game against Ohio State, left everything out there. Will they have enough to get up and bounce back and cover a big number against UCLA the week after?
Danny, we'll be checking in next week. Thanks so much, bud.
Anytime, fellas. Always love talking with you. Take care.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time here from the Single Barrel inside the Graduate Roadshow Thursday, getting your football weekend kicked off. Hail Varsity Radio, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Find the show, follow on Twitter at HVarsity Radio. Get Elijah followed at Herbal Essence, at Schmidt_radio for me. Always like and subscribe. Hail Varsity YouTube to catch the show in video form. And then check out the podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and search Hail Varsity Radio. Give us a rating, good, bad, or ugly. We'll take the feedback. Love it. And we'll tell you where we're at on the road tomorrow in a moment. Back here at the Single Barrel, noon to 2 pregame weekend edition of Hail Varsity Radio on Saturday. And then Real Red Reaction follows. Our friends Neiman and Sons, I want to tell you about them. They are an incredible family-owned business since 1981. They have been getting it done when it comes to a family-run business that specializes in roofing, siding, gutters, and a strong commitment to customer satisfaction, residential or commercial. When we talk about exterior services, think of your friends at Neiman and Sons as well for custom exterior lighting this holiday season. And we're talking Trevor, Travis, the family, just incredible. And give them a shout. Give them a shout if you've got that office building, or how about a house that needs a new roof or new siding. Trusted professionals for decades with Neiman and Sons. And they've been great in the community. We're talking youth football, been sponsoring a team for years. They are licensed, they're accredited, and they have built a solid reputation through quality service, customer trust, excellent work. Neiman and Sons, dial them up today at 402-423-4853, 402-423-4853, or NeimanandSons.com is how you log on and find out more. So, Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill tomorrow. Can't wait. Gretna Roadie patio. Do we feel a patio show tomorrow? Fire pit patio show.
I think we're going to give it the old college try.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how I'm feeling. It looks like we're going to be during the show 60, between 60, 61, 62, somewhere in that lower 60s, but sunny. And I'm not seeing wind in the forecast. That's always nice. And no rain, also very nice as well. So I think we give it a go.
That's awesome.
I did see this, though, Schmidt. We were talking with Danny Burke, and we didn't have time for this, but I just saw this from DraftKings Sportsbook. 87% of the total bets in the Nebraska and UCLA game are on Nebraska minus 6.5.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the handle's at. You'd assume somewhere close to 50-50. That tends to be how it goes. Can't be for certain on that, but 87% of the total bets on Nebraska.
It is now that it is 9.5. You know, I think they cover. We'll get our forecast tomorrow. We'll get a hold of Clausburn and make it happen. You know, I'm feeling a steak. I'm feeling a giant, good old ribeye, single barrel. I'm feeling a whiskey. Maybe a pork chop. I'll take pictures of all of it, Elijah, and send it your way.
All things you need with the Jets and the Texans on Thursday Night Football. Gross. You need a whiskey and a steak to make it through that monstrosity.
We'll check in with you tomorrow at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Gretna will be back here. The great folks at the Single Barrel, noon to 2 on Saturday for Nebraska-UCLA. Like and subscribe Hail Varsity YouTube. Talk tomorrow at 4 with Hail Varsity.